So we have some news out of Carolina. The Carolina Hurricanes have extended their general manager, Don Waddell, to a 3-year contract extension to stay with the Carolina Hurricanes. Let's take a look at this move for the Carolina Hurricanes, what Don Waddell has done so far in Carolina, and hopefully bringing the team back to the promised land. Let's take a look at Don Waddell. So the Carolina Hurricanes back around this time last year, maybe a little bit earlier in the year. The Carolina Hurricanes announced their new general manager, their new coach, Rod Brind'Amour, and especially with bringing in the new owner, Tom Dundon, there were a lot of changes in Carolina, and one of them was bringing in Waddell. And since then, he's worked out pretty well with the Carolina Hurricanes, made some pretty good trades last season, and gave him a 3-year contract extension. So taking a look at Don Waddell, now obviously he started his general manager career back with the Atlanta Thrashers franchise, which unfortunately is not around any longer. He moved up a little bit north to North Carolina, where the Hurricanes are playing, and he's done pretty well now. Usually a general manager with a track record of being with an expansion team and the team being moved, like Atlanta, probably isn't a good resume for a general manager, but Don Waddell was given another chance, and he's proven to do pretty well so far. So taking a look at some moves that he's made. So the Carolina Hurricanes acquired Jordan Martinook and a 4th-round pick for Marcus Kruger and a 3rd-round pick. So Marcus Kruger was a dead cap contract. He really wasn't doing anything. That's another contract to Arizona that they just take. Jordan Martinook actually turned into a pretty decent player for the Carolina Hurricanes, a body in the during the season, and was a good leader, bringing the team into the Stanley Cup playoffs. The 4th-round pick ended up being Luke Henman. We're not sure who he's really going to be at this point, but it was basically a 3rd for a 4th. So we'll have to see how that turns out in a couple of years. But as of right now, we aren't really sure what that really looks like. Then we're starting to talk about pretty massive trades here. So before the end of June, the Calgary Flames acquired Elias Lindholm and Noah Hannafin from the Carolina Hurricanes in exchange for Michael Ferland, Dougie Hamilton, and Adam Fox, who since has been moved to New York Rangers. So this is definitely not one of the best deals for Don Waddell. Michael Ferland has since moved on. He is now in Vancouver with the Vancouver Canucks. Dougie Hamilton is the only piece that's still a part of the Carolina Hurricanes at this point. Elias Lindholm had an unbelievable season on that top line last year with Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau. I would expect that to continue. And Noah Hannafin was a pretty good player on the back end, and especially they're going to lose guys more than likely this offseason, guys like Hamnick and Brody. A guy like Hannafin can add some stability, in the back end. So I would have to say that's a win for Calgary, but that wouldn't be the end of it for Don Waddell, as he would trade a couple of draft picks, and then he traded Jeff Skinner. Now, Jeff Skinner, we know, probably a little overpaid. Some would argue in Buffalo, I've heard it, that he's a pretty good player and he's worth the 9.5. I think that's a little bit high for a player like Jeff Skinner. That's what the market's offering. I get that. But I'm not sure Carolina would have given that. And he would have been given up for nothing at this year's on July 1st this year. So they were able to acquire Cliff Pugh, a 2nd-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, and a 6th-round pick. So obviously none of these are really great draft picks, but you do have a 2nd and Cliff Pugh, who I believe is a former 1st or 2nd-round pick. So you have a decent group of players there. We're not really sure what they're going to turn into at this point. Still a couple of 2020 draft picks in there that we don't know. But, overall, some would argue right off the bat Buffalo won the trade. They kept him, so you could still make that argument. They may have the best player here. But we don't know. We've seen 3rd and 6th-round picks become pretty good hockey players. So we'll have to wait and see on this deal. I think it's a little too soon still. And now Jeff Skinner's got to prove it. He's making that $9.5 million. He's got to be able to play pretty well for the next decade in Buffalo. Now this is where Don Waddell starts taking pretty good shots at teams and winning trades. So we see Nino Niederreiter go to the Carolina Hurricanes for Victor Rask. Really good contract here for the Carolina Hurricanes. They pick up a great player in Nino Niederreiter, former top 5 overall pick from the New York Islanders. Really good hockey player in Nino Niederreiter. And a Victor Rask center who really has struggled to stay in the lineup. He's had a lot of injury issues. He was injured actually when the Wild brought him in, and this was a bargain for Don Waddell and the Carolina Hurricanes. One of their best trades by far, and it probably one of the trades that kept Don Waddell as the general manager in Carolina. So obviously, things didn't go so well with Cliff Pooh. He gets traded to the Florida Panthers for future considerations, so we're not even sure what Pooh is going to get traded for. Probably some money or something like that. Not a great trade there. Now, this is an interesting trade. So, the New York Rangers acquire Adam Fox, who they traded for in that Calgary deal. They acquire a second, a conditional third, pretty decent draft picks. Now, that third can also turn into a 2020 second if Adam Fox plays in 30 games in the 2019-2020 season. So they could end up getting 2 second-round picks here. That would be an unbelievable trade for the Carolina Hurricanes. So basically that, if you're looking at this trade with Calgary now, it's Elias Lindholm, Noah Hannafin for Dougie Hamilton, and a second and a third, possibly 2 seconds there. So not an awful trade. Makes the trade feel a little bit better for Carolina fans, nonetheless. And then we see a great move again by Don Waddell, taking advantage of the salary cap space that he had, trading a 6th-round pick to the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for Patrick Marleau and all of his salary, and a 2020 first-round pick. Now that condition becomes that first-rounder can also become a 2021 first-rounder in the case that Toronto is in the draft lottery. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If the Leafs pick is top 10 in the 2020 draft, they will receive the 2021 pick, and they also receive a 7th-round pick from Toronto as well. So take with that what you will, but they were able to acquire some pretty good assets for Patrick Marleau, and they really weren't paying him anything. It was more for that salary cap space, more so than the actual dollars they were giving Patrick Marleau. So they bought him out, and we'll see what happens if he goes to California and plays, or he retires. Either way, great trade by Don Waddell. And there you go. There's 3 pretty decent trades in a row there for Don Waddell and the Hurricanes. And then we see them trade with the Ottawa Senators. So the Ottawa Senators pick up a 2nd-round pick. The Ottawa Senators acquire a 2nd-round pick for a 2019 2nd-round pick. So Carolina moved down in the draft. And they also pick up a 3rd-rounder. So they pick up a 2nd and a 3rd for a 2nd. Obviously, that was an earlier 2nd with the one that the Senators picked up, but nonetheless, a great trade for the Carolina Hurricanes. Don Waddell, again, is making magic, and unbelievable job. So then we see, again, him moving picks again. So he moves his 2nd-round pick at number 59 for a 3rd and a 4th-round pick. And, again, you're making it work with draft picks, so he basically traded 2 2nd-round picks for a 2nd, 2 3rds, and a 4th. So he's able to pick up some pretty good draft picks there. Pretty good trade. And we see trade with the Chicago Blackhawks over the summer. The Blackhawks acquired Calvin DeHaan and Alexi Sorella, a player I thought that was going to be a part of the Carolina Hurricanes' future. Obviously, they have different plans now. For Anton Forsberg and Gustav Forsling, I don't know necessarily how I feel about this trade for the Hurricanes. Gustav Forsling could be a pretty good defenseman. He played very well with the Blackhawks last year. I'm a little worried, though, about Alexi Sorella. I think he's still got potential. He came all the way back from the Eric Staal trade with the New York Rangers. So we'll have to wait and see. Now Sorella's been bounced around again, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. So they also made a trade with the Vegas Golden Knights to acquire Nicholas Roy Waugh and a 5th-round pick, which can become another pick. It could end up becoming another 5th-round pick for the next year. So it's not too big of a deal for Eric Howla. Great pickup there. This is a really good draft trade history here for Don Waddell. He's done a great job. And we'll have to wait and see what he does in the future. Thank you for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe. Check out our Instagram as well at Goal Line Hockey. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.